Part 19. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 182. Han Qian frowned while looking at the phone and cursed softly. He looks like a tiger. Don't you know that I can't see facial expressions on my phone? After saying that, he turned around and looked at Wen Nuan, who was driving, and whispered, "I want to change my phone." Wen Nuan squinted at Han Qian and curled his lips. "Change it if you want. Why do you keep asking me? Will I argue with you over a mobile phone? Go buy a mobile phone first. Come on." Finally being able to change his mobile phone, Han Qian felt a little excited in his heart. Han Qian wanted to go underground and buy an ordinary one. Nuan directly took Han Qian to the Apple store. He walked in without any nonsense and picked up the latest model. "Swipe your card and leave." Han Qian looked at the box in Nuan's hand, raised his head and looked at Nuan, his eyes a little confused. "This is just this, more than 7,000. Now Han Qian was the one who could drive. Nuan was tinkering with Han Qian's mobile phone. Only then did Han Qian realize that the mobile phone SIM card was so small, and the card was inserted from the side. This mobile phone did not require a battery. Nuan fiddled with her phone. The phone book only stored her number. As for her mother-in-law and father-in-law, Han Qian could memorize it and didn't need to save it. At the same time, Yan Qingqing's number was also added to the blacklist. Nuan fiddled with the new phone and said softly, "Originally I wanted to buy you a Samsung flip phone, but then I thought about how inconvenient it was to hold it. This phone has a function. I can lock the location of this phone at any time. Please be careful. I have your phone number. I took photos and saved them in the photo album, remember to look at them when you are looking for the number." As he spoke, Wen Nuan kept taking selfies with the camera. He found one he was satisfied with and used it as a screensaver and desktop, and said again, "You are not allowed to change wallpapers and screensavers, just use my photos. I told you that you won't change it? I agree if you change your mobile phone, but you are not allowed to download dating apps like VX and QQ, do you hear me? Oh, I don't have time to play with those messy things. How about we switch? Give me the one you have, and I'll give this to you. No, if it works well I'll buy one. Are you satisfied now? Let's go. Let's go." Han Qian giggled. He couldn't even calculate the fraction of how much he owed Wen Nuan now. He would feel sorry for the 7,000 yuan, but he would not regret it. Thinking back to the way the salesman looked at him in the mobile phone store just now. After getting off the car at Tu Xiao's company, Wen Nuan handed the phone to Han Qian. Han Qian carefully kicked it into the inner pocket of his coat as if he had found a treasure, and patted it as he walked, for fear of losing it. Looking at Han Qian's cautious look, Nuan frowned and cursed. "Why do you say your annual salary is 5 or 600,000, how can you be like this? Can you be more generous? Don't be such a miser." Han Qian turned his head and looked at Wen Nuan seriously, shaking his head gently. "No, this is only a small amount of 10,000 yuan. Nuan squinted and smiled at Han Qian. "Are you happy?" "Happy. How am I doing? A Mid-Autumn Festival gift. Good. Stay away from Yan Qingqing from now on." Just when Han Qian was about to answer, Nuan had already seen the good word about to come out. She knew that Han Qian kept his word and nailed it with every spit, but just when Han Qian was about to answer, Guan Yunbiao came trotting over and shouted, "Road! Brother Han! Brothers and sisters, why didn't you inform us earlier that you were here? We didn't even have time to prepare for the welcoming ceremony." After saying this, Xiao Tukan stood behind Guan Yunbiao and sweetly called "Little Aunt." "Since I got the New Year's money from Wen Nuan in advance last time, Wen Nuan is Xiao Tukan's biological aunt. It doesn't matter whether she is my uncle or not. Nuan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. If God has a spirit, can he keep these two troublesome guys away? It is basically impossible to induce Han Qian to answer now. Several people walked into the company together. The dining table was placed in Tu Xiao's office. A large table for 12 people was filled with various delicacies, and only 5 people were seated. Tu Xiao, Tu Kun. Warmth, Han Qian. Little Tukan. When everyone was seated, Wen Nuan was just about to use her chopsticks. She was already very hungry. Han Qian reached out and pinched Wen's leg and glanced at the photos on the bookshelf. On a table, Han Qian and Wen Nuan were sitting on the left, Tu Kun and Guan Degu were sitting on the right, and Tu Xiao was sitting opposite the owner. Opposite him was the photo on the bookshelf, the Mid-Autumn Festival. How could it be missing? The position of the hostess. No matter how good or bad Tu Xiao is, no matter how old he is. Everyone admitted that Tu Xiao had never forgotten his late wife for even a moment, and she always held the most important position in his heart. This was something that even little Tu Kun could not compare to. With Tu Xiao's status and financial resources, there were too many women who approached him, but they had never heard of any gossip about Tu Xiao. Everyone knew that the person he cared about most now was his precious daughter. There are no weaknesses. Tu Xiao picked up the wine glass and toasted to the photo. After one drink, the 4 people led by Han Qian stood up. Tu Xiao was slightly startled. When he stood up, he smiled. He found that Han Qian, who was standing sideways, was facing more towards the photo. Tu Xiao smiled. Han Qian smiled happily. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. I found that it was right for me to be my brother-in-law. I am from my mother's side. Tu Xiao pointed at Han Qian and shook his head and laughed. The 5 of them drank a little bit of the wine in their glasses. That's it? Everyone who is working today has something to do. Little Tu Kun will also go to Li Jiaoyi's place soon. Li Jiaoyi has already been here in the morning and bought Tu Xiao a bottle of wine with his own money. Li Jiaoyi and Tu Kun are a couple who will get married when they reach adulthood. While eating, Wen Nuan suddenly burped, and the dinner table became quiet for a moment. Little Tu Kun looked at Wen with wide eyes and whispered. So, little aunt, you also hiccup. Wen Nuan blushed instantly, lowered his head, grabbed Han Qian's hand and squeezed it hard. Han Qian couldn't hold it back and smiled and cursed at Xiao Tukan. Go. Then he smiled at Nuan. Why are you in a hurry? No one is competing with you. Come and drink some water. When Han Qian said this, Wen Nuan also let go, raised his head and took a sip of water, picked up the chopsticks and ate, saying vaguely. Boss Tu said we are a family anyway, why should I pretend to be a lady? I am just hungry. After waiting for you all morning, you and Yan Qingqing will eat and drink, and I will drive to pick you up. Ah. So annoying. Nuan simply let go, but there was no difference between her letting go and not letting go. She would just eat the dishes placed further away. This performance made Tu Xiao extremely happy. Today's dishes were all made by him. Both the daughter and Biozi were salty and didn't eat much. Finally, someone came to support him. Little Tu Kun deliberately spoiled his father and said in a low voice. Little aunt, aren't you salty? Once you have tasted my mother's cooking, you will know what salty taste is. It goes well with rice. Slowly Wen Nuan and Tu Kun got together. Han Qian remembered that they were incompatible with each other when they first met. Now they don't know how they ended up playing together. 3 men on the other side also got together. Tu Xiao was holding wine glass whispered. Are you sure you're going to the party tonight? Han Qian drank the juice and nodded gently, whispering. Originally, my mother-in-law didn't let me go because the party was not very clean. I touched someone while driving a few days ago. My second uncle Wen Nuan knew about it and called me to tell me to drive for him that night. It seemed like I have no choice but to go. Oh. By the way, I hit Wei Tianquan's daughter with the car. The words were so shocking that Tu Xiao almost choked on his wine, turned his head and looked at Han Qian with a frown. That little bastard? Be careful, she and his father are carved from the same mold. Han Qian nodded and spoke softly. This Wei Tiancheng doesn't seem to have a clean foundation. Will he treat Tu Kun? Don't worry, he doesn't dare. Just like I didn't touch his most beloved canary, Wei Tiancheng doesn't care much about his daughter. The most he cares about is giving money, constantly giving money, otherwise this little girl won't know how to do it. It has become like this. Be careful when you go at night. Last time you told me that it was the guy from the prosecutor's office. I sent someone to check and found something. Han Qian became a little curious, tilted his head and whispered. Tell me. Tu Xiao curled his lips and nodded. I have heard about this, but I have nowhere to go to verify it. Back then, there was an honest man from the countryside who came to work in the city right after his child was born. Later, for some reason, he was reported for murder. There was no surveillance in those days. And so on, he was sentenced to 20 years for nothing. When his children grew up, they began to think of ways to overturn the case. In the end, the verdict was wrong, and they paid more than 1 million yuan in compensation. The prosecutor at that time there was an opportunity to take 2 steps forward, 2 steps. It was delayed because of this matter. When Tu Xiao said this, he noticed that everyone on the table was looking at him. The old man was also a little embarrassed. He picked up the wine glass and sipped the wine and smiled. Just take it as a joke. Originally, this matter ended like this. 4 or 5 years ago, a reporter went to interview this man and wanted to dig up some news. He just came into contact with this honest and dull man, and he disappeared the same day. It was already a corpse when it was found. Who do you think you should suspect? Later, the prosecutor intervened in the case and you may not believe it. He was still the same person back then. He entered the crime scene many times without permission, and every time he entered, can find physical evidence that others haven't. Hearing this, Han Qian frowned. Isn't this just revenge and frame up? Tu Xiao smiled and shook his head. Retaliation? Who can prove that he is retaliating? But everyone can prove that the female reporter disappeared after seeing this stupid man. All her family's savings were used to support her connections. She went to a lawyer. The lawyer found a lot of evidence that prosecutors entered the scene. But there was no way to prove the man's innocence. Not only that, his son was also implicated. This time he was sentenced to 15 years and the son 3 years. After hearing this, Han Qian almost couldn't breathe. Has no one discovered so many loopholes? Just lock him up like this for the rest of his life? Xiao Tukan asked a little childishly. Dad, don't you suspect that the crime is innocent? Tu Xiao smiled at his precious daughter. Baby. I just woke up and didn't check for typos. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 183. Little Tu Kun lowered his head and didn't know what he was thinking about. At this time, Nuan spoke. Boss Tu, is this person you are talking about Feng's Haida? Tu Xiao shrugged. Who else could be there besides him? I checked and it was said that Gao Fulai was in contact with him. I don't know what benefits he got. I just know that Gao Fulai asked him to hold my license through connections. If you hadn't helped me, brother and sister, maybe now I have already started a lawsuit with Glory. After having enough wine and food, Wen Nuan and Xiao Tukan went for a walk. They both ate a little too much. Quan Degu and his people followed him for protection. Tu Xiao promised Han Qian at the dinner table. In this city, as long as he is here, from now on, no Xiao Xiao will dare to provoke Wen Nuan, from thieves to evildoers who have just been released from prison. Tu Xiao dares to make this guarantee. There were only 2 people left at the dinner table. Tu Xiao threw a cigar to Han Qian. Han Qian shook his head, took out Wen Nuan and lit his cigarette, took a deep puff. Tu Xiao lit the cigar and smiled. It's good for the 2 of you to meet this Feng's Haida's hypocrisy. He doesn't dare to touch Wen Nuan rashly. If there is any small trick behind his back, no one can explain it. I will find an opportunity to kill him. Don't. It's better for you to be careful. It's better to be quiet at this juncture. Don't rush Gao Xing. He's useful to me. I'm not worried about anyone now. What I'm worried about is Lin Zongheng, his grandson. He is so quiet. Tu Xiao shook his head with a smile and said with a smile. Why are you worried about him? I threatened several shareholders of Changxiang. I heard from them that Lin Zongheng wants to make Changxiang a province. Now he is thinking of finding allies. He probably wants to drive his younger siblings out of the company as soon as possible. Don't worry about him touching you, in this city. Besides asking me to pay for his murder, the rest is just Wei Tiancheng. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Hey! Why did I encounter so much trouble after the divorce? If I had known I would get divorced later, it would be so peaceful to go home and farm. I am most afraid of trouble. Seeing Han Qian's sad look, Tu Xiao smiled. If you go home to farm, your brain will be in vain. Are you with Mr. Yan in the morning? Vice President Wen in the afternoon. These 2 little girls are going to meet in the evening. I wish you all the best, right? Yes, did you win Jijing last time? Oh shit. Without even mentioning this matter, Han Qian turned his head and glared at Tu Xiao, then grabbed Tu Xiao's neck and shook it vigorously with Tu Xiao's evil smile on his face. My good brother, I have to thank you very much. The suit I just bought was soaked in water all night. I sat under the cold water for more than half an hour, and I said there was something wrong with the thing you gave me to drink. Tu Xiao smiled and patted Han Qian's arm and said with a smile. If you don't let go, I'm going to burn you with a cigar. Brother, don't I think about you too? Take it off early to prevent accidents. Do you think I'm surprised enough now? You have an ambiguous relationship with that female teacher. Do you believe that I even hooked up with Wei Tianquan's daughter? Believe it? Why don't you believe it? But I don't agree with this. You call me big brother, and then call Wei Tiancheng dad? No way. Roll, roll, roll. Han Qian got up and walked out the door. He didn't want to say a word to Tu Xiao now. This old man was not serious at all. He was sitting on the sofa outside watching Wen Nuan and Tu Kan playing badminton. This guy is so good, a bunch of little guys. Help pick up the ball. Han Qian carefully took out his new phone. He was careful when pressing the buttons for fear of damaging them. After looking at it for a long time, Han Qian waved to the front desk girl who was still working during the holiday. Big sister, go and buy me a mobile phone screen protector. Uncle, I'm going right away. The young lady picked up the bag and stood up to buy it. However, this voice made Han Qian feel strange. Not long after, the young lady came back. She squatted in front of the sofa and put a film on Han Qian's new mobile phone. Han Qian looked at it and said, seriously, he whispered. This phone is very valuable. Yes, uncle, it costs more than 7,000. It's the Apple brand. Yes, the logo is here. It's also a smart touch-screen phone. That's right, that's right. I'm awesome. The young lady at the front desk was crying and holding her phone close to her face. My uncle was dressed in expensive clothes, and he was the object of Mr. Yan and Mr. Wen's admiration. How could he talk like a coward, like a child who had never seen the world and was showing off his toys? Han Qian felt sleepy just looking at him. He didn't get a good rest all night. It was hard for him not to feel sleepy even after eating so much and basking in the sun. He squinted his eyes and fell asleep on the sofa. The young lady finished putting on the phone screen protector. At that time, he found that Han Qian had fallen asleep. He got up and called Mr. Wen outside the door. He handed the phone to Nuan and told her that Han Qian was asleep. When Nuan was also tired of playing. When she walked into the lobby, she saw Han Qian sleeping with a mineral water bottle on his pillow. He shook his head helplessly, walked up and lifted Han Qian's head and put it on her lap. He lowered his head and looked at her side. Man. Is liking him really the best choice? Thinking of this, Worm smiled to himself. If you can control your emotions, what's the use of your heart? When Han Qian woke up, Nuan had already gone to the party with Yu Shisai. Looking at the dark sky outside, Han Qian looked for the antique mobile phone out of habit. After a while, he remembered that the phone was in Nuan's car and took it. He picked up the new phone on the table and saw that the 6 or 7 missed calls on it were all from Li Jinhai. Han Qian panicked. He hurriedly called back and heard Li Jinhai's roar. If you want to let me go, you should tell me earlier. Han Qian scratched his head and whispered. I overslept. I just changed my phone and I'm not used to it. Should I go pick you up now? Li Jinhai said coldly. If you don't learn to ignore it, you won't come over to sleep at home during the holidays. What? Are you still waiting for me to pick you up? Han Qian stood up, stretched and yawned. No. I'm not at home. I'm tired after eating at Tu Xiao's place. What are you doing hanging out with Mr. Tu Kun? Han Qian, get here, you're mad at me. Hurry up. After hanging up with Han Qian got up and ran. He went out and stopped a taxi to see Li Jinhai. 20 minutes later, Han Qian stood in front of Li Jinhai. Li Jinhai glanced at Han Qian and said coldly. What? You're not going to go in with me? Are you still wearing sportswear? Han Qian, it's not what my second uncle said about you. Your character needs someone to force you forward. You are too lazy and too casual. Just wear sportswear. Exercise, go drive, I'll probably drink tonight, let's go. What do you want me to do? Car keys. Second uncle, can you stop scolding me when we meet? Scolding you? I still want to beat you, Gun, don't live up to your expectations. I have long said that I would bring you to the city bureau to be my assistant. I can also watch you. Jinhai is really too pampered. Look at it. You and Wen Nuan are spoiled, and the more you think about it, the more angry you become. Why didn't Wen come over with you, and why didn't she go to the party? She's going with her little sisters. How about your explanation? Drive. People who have gone through menopause really have no way to communicate, it's too difficult. The black Passat left the community. Party. Han Qian didn't want to go. I also remembered the text messages on my cell phone. Don't go to the party. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 184. Fate gathers in Kailong. Gathered together by fate, we made a grand triumph. A very interesting name. It is also a party where the yeomanmen and businessmen gather tonight. In order not to cause trouble in the future, the yeomanmen will propose the venue for the party. The businessmen are responsible for spending money to prepare, and the matter discussed is for the development of the city. Various departments negotiated with each other to jointly develop the city. Let everyone enter a well-off society and stop newlyweds from quarreling over daily necessities. But the truth is half and half. Businessmen rarely consider ordinary citizens. They only have money in their eyes, and half of them are people who work in the government offices. Except for some small figures, there are not many people who can speak in the city. Apart from those who are half motivated by selfish desires, not much can be considered for the common people. Li Jinhai can be regarded as one of the protagonists tonight. These businessmen, especially those in real estate, will always encounter some troubles during demolition, and they also need extraordinary means. And how far the means can be used depends on whether Li Jinhai still gives them. This face. Li Jinhai no longer has a boss in the municipal bureau. The old director suddenly fell ill and became bedridden a year ago. Li Jinhai is responsible for all matters in the municipal bureau. If his age had not been a factor, Li Jinhai would have had a chance to become the top leader of the municipal bureau. Nuan and Yu Shisai have arrived at the party. Tonight Nuan is wearing a white body-shaping evening dress, with long hair tied behind her head, and a diamond ring on her ring finger. Both her hairstyle and the ring tell those men that she is married. Next to Nuan is a mixed-race beauty who is almost the same height as her. She wears a goose yellow breast-wrapped evening dress, revealing her smooth shoulders. The plumpness of her chest is ready to come out. Her long golden hair hangs down in big waves. PoortoRich. A very old-fashioned name, a very sexy mixed-race beauty. After the two appeared, the men at the party had already started to make moves. Miss Wen was married, but the ring of the beauty next to her was on her index finger. It was a signal that she was single. Someone soon came up to chat with her. It was only a minute away. The two of them were stunned but did not walk over. Being chatted up by this group of greasy old men and some young talents who thought they were handsome, Wen seemed very irritated, and his smiling face at first turned into indifference. However, Yu Shisai was very talkative and could talk to everyone. And he gladly accepted the invitation. Whether he would go to the appointment or not is another matter. Just when Nuan was about to go berserk, a familiar yet unfamiliar voice came from behind. Xiao Nuan, PoortoRich. Lin Zongheng came, pushing away the people gathered around him as if he wanted to be a flower protector. Lin Zongheng stayed very close. Due to the large number of people around him, Nuan frowned and took a small step back, nodded lightly, and said to Yu Shisai. He narrowed his eyes and smiled at Lin Zongheng. "Hello, Mr. President, my surname is Yu, not Shi." She playfully distanced the two of them. Yu Shisai came back for warmth. She could not have anything to do with this Lin Zongheng. Before returning to China, she also made enough character information about Chang Xiang. She had a good understanding of Lin Zongheng and Yu Shisai. The evaluation is handsome, rich, educated, capable, well-born, and well-educated. 60% favorable opinion. Lin Zongheng smiled at Yu Shisai and said softly, "Is it possible that I should call you Xiao Yu? You and I have rarely met each other, but we already know your existence, right Xiao Nuan?" Nuan raised his head, smiled, and nodded slightly. She doesn't want to say a word now. Lin Zongheng looked very bright tonight. With his tall figure and handsome face, he had already become the target of some women. At this party, the status of businessmen may not be that high. While Lin Zongheng was chatting with Nuan and Yu Shisai, people from the Yamen Gate also came over. The two bosses from the Health and Land Bureau came over to say hello. The boss from the Land Bureau was over 50 years old. He smiled and called Nuan niece, and when Nuan responded with a smile. The boss from the Land Bureau asked Nuan and Lin Zongheng Chang Xiang if they had done anything. Regarding the idea of real estate, the city has recently been thinking about renovating shanty towns. When Nuan asked in a low voice which land it was, and the boss smiled and said it was the village in the wasteland. When Nuan frowned and shook his head slightly, but Lin Zongheng nodded and smiled. "You can prepare." The boss of the Land Bureau left with a smile. After he left, Nuan turned around and looked at Lin Zongheng and said coldly, "What's the use of moving the wasteland? Citizens of this kind of urban village are the hardest to deal with. If we have more money, we will lose money. If we have less money, we will cause unnecessary trouble. What can be developed with this land? You promise if you tell them, they will take it seriously. Lin Zongheng looked at Wen Nuan and smiled softly. This matter is troublesome for other groups, but it is very easy for us. Your second uncle is in the city bureau. I remember that my aunt has a poker friend whose husband is from the land bureau. All these connections are here. How can Chang Xiang have trouble? Woolen cloth. Hua Luo stretched out his hand to touch Nuan's shoulder, but Nuan dodged him as soon as he stretched out his hand and frowned. Chang Xiang means Chang Xiang. My uncle is my uncle. Originally, my family was already at a standstill because of my father's business and my uncle's position. Now let my mother's relatives and friends do the renovation of this shanty town? Lin Zongheng, why are you so embarrassed? Feeling that Wen Nuan was angry, Lin Zongheng said quickly. Xiao Nuan, don't be angry. I don't mean to ask the second uncle and aunt to come forward to help, but if you take over this task, someone will naturally open the back door for you. Now there are voices in the company saying that you are incompetent. I'm also thinking of ways to help you. Thank you. No need. After saying this, Wen Nuan turned around and left. At this time, Yu Shisai was entangled by the old man from the health bureau. Wen Nuan pulled Yu Shisai and whispered that she felt uncomfortable in her stomach. Yu Shisai smiled apologetically at the big boss. Laughing, the two went to the bathroom together. Lin Zongheng's eyes grew colder as he watched Wen Nuan leave, and he cursed in his heart. When I take you out of my sight, you will no longer be able to reject me. One day you will kneel down and beg me, climb into my bed, and that you poetry, once the warmth is done, you will be next. Director Qian, rare guests, rare guests. Please. Mr. Yan, please. When this voice reached Lin Zongheng's ears, his face became even more ugly. What he hated most in his heart was Han Qian, and then this Yan Qingqing. In Lin Zongheng's eyes, this foul-mouthed coquettish slut was not a woman. He didn't bother to say hello, so he snorted and went to look for the connections he needed to find. This caused the big boss of the health bureau who wanted to greet him to open his mouth, but no words came out. Qian Ling seemed to be very familiar with these old guys. When she walked into the hall, Lu Chang had already come over and followed behind her. Lu Chang carefully looked at Yan Qingqing. The black evening dress with large fake diamonds was shining under the light. There were rumors that her evening dress was very conservative, but it couldn't hide her aphrodisiac-like figure, paired with her white fox face and captivating eyes. Lu Chang forgot to breathe for a while, and while he was intoxicated, this fox beauty who brought disaster to the country spoke. Look, I'll dig out your eyes for you. The voice is also very beautiful, but these words. How could a good Sudaji have such a mouth? As expected, Lu Chang didn't dare to look any further. Qian Ling, who was walking in front, also heard Yan Qingqing's words, stopped and frowned and whispered. Qingqing. Lu Chang and Han Qian met. They communicated at night. Don't scare Lu Chang. As soon as she heard that she knew Han Qian, Yan Qingqing suddenly changed into a different person, stretched out her white catkins, narrowed her eyes and smiled at Lu Chang. It turns out he is Han Qian's friend. When the two shook hands, Yan Qingqing's face instantly turned gloomy, and she whispered into Lu Chang's ear. You can't bully your friend's wife, you understand? I'm going to gouge your eyes out while you're looking at me. Yes, yes. Master. I have some things to do over there, so I'll leave first. Lu Chang was scared away by Yan Qingqing. Yan Qingqing curled her lips when she saw this, but she began to curse Han Qian in her heart. This guy's phone must have been tampered with by Wen Nuan again, and the call could not be made. Then Yan Qingqing began to look for Wen Qian everywhere. Yan Qingqing felt much better when she didn't find the giant baby, but she found Lin Zongheng and waved and smiled at Lin Zongheng from all the way. "Hello, big turtle." At this moment, Gao Xing'ai and Li Dehai also came over. Qian Ling turned around and slapped Yan Qingqing's buttocks, saying angrily, "Don't be ridiculous. Don't let the people at the Yamanmen know that you and Lin Zongheng have a grudge. This is what they are best at taking advantage of." After saying this, Qian Ling smiled softly at Li Dehai. "How have you been recently? Is Dongsheng the kid okay?" Li Dehai smiled lightly. "Thank you, Director Qian, for caring about Kwanzaa. Everything is fine." People at the party gathered together in twos and threes. There were combinations of businessmen and government officials, and there were also combinations of businessmen and businessmen. The party was about finding partners to make money together, so we couldn't miss this opportunity. Yan Qingqing also saw Wen Wen, walked forward with champagne, squinted her eyes and smiled at Wen Wen. "Wen Zhuiying, did you touch Han Qian's cell phone?" Nuan opened his arms and hugged Yan Qingqing gently. In the eyes of outsiders, it was great that the two young ladies had nothing to do with each other. Nuan chuckled in Yan Qingqing's ear. "I blocked your number." Han Qian changed his phone. He probably doesn't know how to get it back. "Are you happy?" Yan Qingqing opened her arms and hugged Wen Nuan tightly, smiling. "Sister, your breasts must be plump." Yu Shisai, who was standing aside, looked at Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing in shock. "Who is Han Qian?" When I was curious, tonight's main guest arrived. Li Jinhai walked into the hall wearing a police uniform. He was followed by a guy in sportswear with a reluctant look on his face. Looking at Han Qian's clothes, Nuan slapped him on the forehead and said helplessly, "It's over, I forgot to prepare his clothes." Yan Qingqing looked at Han Qian in shock and frowned. "Him? Why do you still look so reluctant?" Yu Shisai smiled. If nothing else happened, this man must be the Han Qian mentioned by these two city flowers. A bit handsome, a bit naughty. Favorability 1%. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 185. There are too many people who are fawning over Li Jinhai, and the big bosses in various government offices are not willing to offend this black-faced Mr. Bao. Not to mention Li Jinhai's ability, his brother's ability can crush them, businessmen, with one hand. The boss. Before he had walked 10 steps, a wine glass appeared in Li Jinhai's hand. There were too many people coming to toast. Li Jinhai sipped the wine in small sips, while the toasters had to drink it all in one gulp. The boss of the Land Bureau came up with the wine glass, behind him following many people. Li Jinhai smiled, lowered his head and whispered to Han Qian. "This old guy is from the Land Bureau, and he is a sworn enemy of your mother-in-law's husband." Yan Luo raised his head and smiled at the man. "Old Ma, I can't drink too much with you tonight. I have to go to the bureau on duty tonight." "Old Li, please stop being so pretentious. Why don't you drink less while you're here? Where are you? Give Director Li a drink. Don't you like the foreign stuff?" As soon as the old guy opened his mouth, the waiter brought a tray and handed a glass of wine to Li Jinhai. Seeing this, Han Qian stretched out his hand to take the glass before Li Jinhai and took a sip. "So spicy." Everyone looked at Han Qian, but Han Qian ignored them and returned the wine glass to Li Jinhai half a minute later. Li Jinhai laughed. "My favorite junior is worried that someone will poison me." "Ha ha ha, Han Qian, why don't you say hello to the elders?" This was the thing that Han Qian hated the most, but he still had the courage to call Uncle Ma. He didn't know the position of this old guy. From the chat, he knew that he was not much lower than Li Jinhai. The old man looked Han Qian up and down, and then smiled. "Yes, you are not as angry as those mothers, and you also know how to consider your elders, but young man, your worries are unnecessary. No one here dares to do anything bad to your elder. Han Qian scratched his head and smiled without saying anything, watching Li Jinhai and the old guy drink up the white wine in their glasses. Crazy. No wonder Li Jinhai asked him to come and drive. After drinking with the official named Ma, Li Jinhai asked the waiter to change him to a glass of water. If he drank like this, he would get drunk even if he was a god. Li Jinhai saw Qian Ling, smiled at her and was about to step forward, when Lin Zongheng suddenly appeared and chuckled softly. Second uncle. He didn't look at Han Qian, and Han Qian didn't look at him either. He looked at the roof and whistled. Li Jinhai frowned at Lin Zongheng, and smiled after a moment. It turns out to be Zongheng. The last time I saw you, you were almost the same as Li Er. After a few years, you have become calmer and more handsome. After saying this, Li Jinhai raised his foot and kicked Han Qian's butt, saying dissatisfiedly, "You haven't said hello yet. He is one of your wife's few friends." Han Qian lowered his head, glanced at Lin Zongheng, and curled his lips. "I've seen it before." Lin Zongheng also curled his lips and ignored it, but smiled softly at Li Jinhai. Second uncle, just now Director Ma from the Land Bureau came over and said that the wasteland wants to be renovated into shanty towns. I want Xiaonuan to take over this task. The pair of Xiaonuan serve the public in the company. Wasteland. Li Jinhai frowned and asked. Lin Zong smiled and was about to speak, but Han Qian had already spoken first. If Wen Nuan is not stupid, don't answer. The citizens of the wasteland are notoriously unruly people. Over the years in the urban village, the longest village chief has been half a year. He often goes to the district government to cause trouble. If you provoke them, you will be labeled. It's bullshit plaster. It doesn't matter whether it makes money or not. It's a sure thing to unite and file a complaint with the city hall and blackmail you. I have to tell Nuanuan when I get back. Why are you so brainless? Han Qian mercilessly degraded Lin Zongheng to the point of being worthless, and Lin Zongheng retorted. After the demolition, they will be separated. At that time, reasonable demolition regulations will be followed. If you don't understand, don't talk nonsense. It counts only if it can be demolished. Do you think there has been no mention of demolition in the wasteland? There are fewer cases of holding a gas tank on the roof and directing and acting in a real estate house in the middle of the night to commit murder? I have eaten foreign food for several years and read a few more books. English doesn't mean you understand the common people. Han Qian, you. Lin Zongheng's face became very ugly. He only knew these reasons before leaving this matter to Nuan. Li Jinhai coughed dryly and stopped the quarrel between the two, ignoring Lin Zongheng and striding towards Qian Ling. At this time, Yan Qingqing had already returning to Qian Ling's side. Nuan and Yu Shisai also appeared behind Li Jinhai. While Li Jinhai and Qian Ling were chatting, Nuan pinched Han Qian's waist and whispered, "Why don't you change your clothes?" Han Qian felt pain and whispered back, "You left when I woke up, and I was caught by my second uncle. I didn't even want to come in." As soon as he finished speaking, Yan Qingqing walked over and said softly, "Han Qian, you are a glorious person now. Come here." "Oh. Han Qian, come back, you are not in the company now." "Oh." Lin Zongheng couldn't stand it anymore, gritted his teeth and turned to leave. What's so good about Han Qian? What's so good about him? A dwarf. On the other hand, Yu Shisai watched with interest as Yan Qingqing and Wen Nuan fought for Han Qian. This Han Qian was also a bit interesting. At least he had a good temper. Yu Shisai stretched out his hand to Han Qian and smiled. "Hello, Yu Shisai." The two women on the left and right were arguing quietly. Han Qian raised his head in confusion and saw that the mixed-race beauty had reached out his hand. He raised his hand and pinched the fingertips of the mixed-race beauty and said softly, "Hello, Han Qian." After saying this, he didn't even look at Yushasai. He looked at Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing from left to right and gritted his teeth. "Did you two come here to quarrel? Then while you are quarreling, I will find something to drink." Han Qian's reaction made Yushasai a little surprised. Whether at home or abroad, there were countless men who stalked her, and there were also many who pretended to be cold. But this Han Qian was not cold or stalking, he just didn't care about her at all. "Serve as a dish. Aren't you beautiful anymore? Although not as good as Nuan Wen and this Yan Qingqing, my sister's mixed race also has advantages. Is there something wrong with this man?" Han Qian had no time to pay attention to these three women and turned to chat with Lu Chang. The party also officially started. A host took the microphone and said some official words. Han Qian didn't understand it very well. Lu Chang curled his lips and said that they were all fooling people. Let's see which fool falls for it. Sudden. Han Qian started to punch his chest, turned around to find water, ate a piece of bread and stuffed it with his hands. He was in a hurry and accidentally bumped into a waiter. All the drinks were spilled on Han Qian's clothes. Han Qian faced the waiter. With his chest hanging down, the originally dazed waiter hurriedly looked for water. Han Qian, who was looking up at the waiter while taking a swig of mineral water. "Looks familiar, very familiar." The commotion on his side also attracted everyone's attention. Han Qian drank half a bottle of water in one breath and took a big breath. "I almost choked to death. I think you are very. You don't have eyes. Don't you want your salary anymore? Why don't you apologize to this gentleman?" Someone who looked like a lobby manager appeared. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 186. At this moment, Han Qian no longer thought about where he had seen this familiar face. He took the waiter's arm and walked forward, blocking him in front of him and looking at the lobby manager with a frown and dissatisfaction. "Why do you curse when you open your mouth? What do you mean you don't have eyes? It was me who hit him, not him who hit me. Do you have eyes?" The waiter standing behind Han Qian looked at Han Qian's back in astonishment. At this time, the lobby manager said with a smile, "I'm so sorry, sir, because today is quite busy." The waiter, who was temporarily borrowed from other places, could have judged in advance whether he would bump into you and made remedial measures, but he didn't. As a guest, how could you make a mistake? The lobby manager was about to grab the young waiter as soon as he finished speaking. The waiter whispered, "Sir, it was my recklessness, I will compensate." Before he finished speaking, the lobby manager started scolding me again. "Compensation? Do you deserve it? Do you know how much this gentleman's clothes cost? Do you deserve it? Get out. Get out now, a cup costs 100 yuan. I will calculate the compensation with you tomorrow." Han Qian couldn't listen anymore and frowned at the lobby manager. "What can't you afford to pay? Why? In your eyes in this era, why are people still divided into 3, 6, or 9? What do you call worthy and unworthy? They all have one head and two legs. What do you have more than him? He is better than you. What's missing? I already told you that I hit him, do you have no heirs?" At this time, Datang manager no longer paid attention to Han Qian, and kept scolding and humiliating the waiter. Han Qian couldn't stand it anymore, so he walked up and patted the waiter on the shoulder and said softly, "Get out of the way." The waiter didn't know why. As soon as he stepped aside, Han Qian's slap fell on the lobby manager's face. Han Qian frowned and said in confusion, "I said I hit him, don't you understand? Do you like to use your status to suppress others? Come on, I don't have any status. I am just a driver tonight, so you suppress me too. This crisp sound stunned manager Datang. He did not expect that someone would do something in such a place. At the same time, this crisp sound also made the entire lobby quiet down. Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing ran over after seeing the situation here. The latest person to arrive was Lu Chang. After hearing Han Qian briefly explain the matter, he frowned and looked at the lobby manager. 3, 6, or 9. Then look at my calculation. Han Qian said immediately. I said over and over again that I bumped into him. You are doing this endlessly. I slapped you, and then what? You continue to scold him. Why do you become a bad manager and don't know his last name? Everyone has it's a big deal, it's a big deal, it's a trivial matter, but you're the one who fanned the flames. What? Are you showing that you know how to curse? After saying that, he turned around and shook his head gently towards Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing, then looked at the waiter and smiled. I'm sorry for causing you to be scolded tonight. It's only temporary anyway. If you lose your job, go to Glory and find me. I can't guarantee that I can find you a job, but it's definitely not the awesome kind. I'm just a clerk. Well, you look familiar to me. The waiter looked Han Qian in the eyes and suddenly smiled. Mr. Han, I have always had a good impression of you, and it's even better today. But you really shouldn't come to this party. I'm going to do my work first. Thank you. You're welcome, I'm sorry. The waiter walked away with his head lowered. Han Qian tilted his head and looked at his back. He felt very familiar. He must have seen him somewhere. When he was frowning and thinking, Yan Qingqing and Wen Nuan had already come over. He asked softly, Li Jinhai and Qian Ling also came over. Han Qian explained with a smile, then looked down at the drink on his body and smiled helplessly. There is nothing we can do. We can't invite these two beauties to dance. Wen Nuan glared at Han Qian angrily, and Yan Qingqing curled her lips and said that she would not dance with the guy in sportswear because her feet hurt when she stepped on them. The two women did not give Han Qian any face, but Yu Shisai smiled and said she didn't mind. In an instant, Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing turned into angry cats. Only then did Yu Shisai realize that he had said the wrong thing, and smiled and said it was a joke. She just wanted to test whether her charm would be useful to Han Qian. Han Qian scratched his head, smiled, and whispered. If you don't know how to dance, I'll just tell you. This straight man. Qian Ling has already covered her face. Even if she has nothing to do with this Yu Shisai, you can't say that. This little girl has taken the initiative. It's enough to poke people's hearts when you come home. In fact, Han Qian really poked Yu Shisai's self-esteem. Just like this, Nuan and Mr. Yan are fighting for it? Blind. The lobby manager left in despair. The party is still going on. Han Qian walked out of the lobby out of boredom and went to the balcony to smoke and enjoy the evening breeze. It felt so good. At this time, he remembered the waiter. He had actually met him. Last time he met Xiao Tu on the stairs of the underground shopping mall. Kun and her minions bully people. The young man who was beaten at that time was the waiter just now. It's just that that day he was wearing the clothes of a chef, and today he was wearing the clothes of a waiter. The cigarette butt was thrown into the trash can. When he raised his hand, there was another cigarette in front of his eyes. Han Qian took the cigarette and lit it, squinted his eyes, exhaled, and said softly. Did you talk to Lin Zongheng? Haha, this worthless guy came to me and Li Dahai. I really don't know how Lin Mend had such a stupid son. He's not much better than Li Dongsheng. Master Han. Is your dress a little more casual? The person who came was Gao Jixi, and he had a cooperation with Han Qian. Han Qian chuckled. I came in a hurry and forgot to change. Besides, I don't want to come. I don't know anyone, so there's nothing to talk about. Aren't you afraid that Li Dehai will see you and me together? Ha! He has already left, and I am about to leave too. I thought it would be better to come over and say hello. Gao Qian was lying on the railing and laughing. When Han Qian heard someone leaving, he threw away his cigarette and turned around, talking as he walked. Then I have to go. I'll be scolded again if I get caught by that prince of hell. We'll talk at the company tomorrow. When he returned to the lobby, he found Li Jinhai sitting on a chair covering his head. When Han Qian walked forward, he raised his head and frowned. It seems that I drank too much and my head is heavy. You can send me back first and then come back to pick up Xianyuan. Let's go. Good. Han Qian helped Li Jinhai leave the party. This party was not interesting at all to Han Qian. He sent Li Jinhai home. Han Qian took a taxi back to the party. He was too lazy to walk through the main entrance and walked into the hotel along the side door. He smelled of alcohol. He felt very uncomfortable. Han Qian took out his mobile phone and was about to rinse his clothes. His newly purchased mobile phone turned off after being filled with water. He suddenly panicked, threw down his clothes and turned around to find rice. Hearing that it was useful to put it in a rice bag, Han Qian took the phone and ran away. When he came back, he was carrying a red plastic bag with rice inside, and a mobile phone hidden inside the rice. Whistling, I skipped towards the bathroom where the clothes were kept. After taking the clothes, I went to keep them warm. If they got wet, I got them wet. When I got in the car, I took them off. On the way to the bathroom, Han Qian heard screams and grins coming from inside. Picking up the clothes in the sink, a rough voice came from the bathroom. Little bitch, scream. You scream as hard as you can, and everyone is controlled in the lobby. After I play with you, I will go play with the woman in the white evening dress. Her breasts are a bit too small, and those legs, tisk tisk tisk, give me a serious lick. Control. White dress, small breasts. Long legs. Isn't this just warmth? Han Qian felt that something was wrong, and then he remembered the text message on his phone. He knocked on the door gently, and the man inside spoke. Don't worry, I'll make you happy too after I'm done. My purpose is different from yours. I just want to play with women. Han Qian probably knew what this guy was doing. No matter who he was or what he did, if he touched Wen Nuan, it would be a capital offense. Han Qian took a deep breath and knocked on the door again, knocking on the door repeatedly. The man inside seemed a little angry. He pushed the woman away from his crotch, turned around and said irritably. Knock, 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 there are so many women, you can't look for one, who the hell are you? Han Qian looked at this man. He was not tall and his muscular body was scary. Han Qian narrowed his eyes and smiled. I'm your father. He shouted angrily and turned around to pick up the guy on the toilet. This time, Han Qian's eyes widened. Gun. It's sent on time, it's 4.56 minutes Beijing time now. I work so hard, please count your votes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 187. At first, Han Qian thought he was just an ordinary rapist. Han Qian thought about calling the police, but his phone was turned off. This thing is more delicate than Nokia. When he saw the man trying to touch the gun, Han Qian stepped forward and kicked him without even thinking. On the strong man's ass, then covered the man's head with soaked clothes, and kneeled into the exposed dick. Even a strong man couldn't bear such an attack. Han Qian didn't know how many times he was hit. Anyway, the man had stopped making any movement since he started wailing. Han Qian didn't want to leave any trouble. At this time, The man still had his eyes open. Han Qian grabbed his hair and put it on the toilet. Immediately blood splattered everywhere. The man fainted, and the little girl was also frightened. Han Qian had no time to pay attention to the girl, so he dragged the man out of the bathroom. Without a rope, Han Qian tied the man's 10 fingers together with the wire on the mop. Then drag the man's pants to his ankles and tie the middle with the waistband. After finishing everything, Han Qian returned to the bathroom and found that the little girl was pointing a gun at him. Han Qian frowned and grabbed the gun and whispered, "Do you have a mobile phone?" The little girl shook her head and whispered that the phone had been thrown away. Han Qian took a deep breath and smiled, and then hit the little girl on the head with the butt of a gun. It was better for her to faint than to go out and scream. According to this man, he also has an accomplice named Toad. He grabbed one of the man's legs and dragged him out of the bathroom. The doors leading out now should have been blocked. Han Qian didn't expect that he would be able to deal with this guy so easily. If I wanted to blame him, it was because he was so stupid that he even reached for a gun at such a close distance. Looking at the pistol in his hand, Han Qian smiled. I also played at the shooting range. Then Han Qian got lost here. Gradually, Han Qian heard footsteps behind him. He put down the fainting man, turned on the safety cover and turned around. A thin man about 1.6 meters tall was looking at him. Han Qian chuckled. Accomplice? Toad. The short man nodded. He was thin, dark-skinned, and ugly. Han Qian took a deep breath and smiled again. Gun? Hand-to-hand combat? Either you kill me, or I kill you. In fact, you have no interest in doing anything, but you shouldn't touch people you shouldn't touch. You must be in a hurry. The short man Toad shook his head, unbuttoned his clothes, and whispered. I don't have a gun, and I don't like using guns. Brother Lung has a lot to do. Tell us to play casually. We deserve to die, and we won't be much better if we live. Let's fight hand to hand. I haven't met a man like you for a long time. Toad slowly stepped forward and stretched out his hand when he was still one step away from Han Qian. Can you lend me your gun? Han Qian curled his lips and said. Do you think I'm stupid? The Toad shrugged and pulled out the dagger from his boot. Han Qian quickly backed away when he saw this. The scene that followed made him a little unbelievable. The dagger pierced the chest of the unconscious man. Han Qian suddenly felt his stomach churn and said with a trembling voice. He is still alive, kill him. This was the first time Han Qian saw someone end a living life in front of him, and he accepted it. Toad did not draw out the dagger, stood up and looked at Han Qian and said calmly. We will not take him away if he is alive like this. If he is captured, our identity will be revealed. It is better to be safe with the dead. I only have this weapon on me. Can we start? What kind of monsters are these? Just now Han Qian heard the dead man say that they all had different purposes. At this moment, his back was covered in cold sweat and his legs were trembling. If it wasn't for warmth, he would have found a way to escape. But Han Qian dare not leave now. He has a gun in his hand. This is a guarantee. His current speed is definitely faster than the police. Han Qian took a deep breath and said softly. What is your purpose? Toad slowly walked towards Han Qian and said indifferently. Kill someone I want to kill. He seduced my woman and cuckolded me. He was doing something for Brother Lung. I'm still a virgin, can we just pretend we've never met? Han Qian gave in. These are all crazy people. Toad's eyes changed, from serious respect to anger. Han Qian's change made him very disappointed. Aren't men supposed to be fearless of heaven and earth? His pace gradually quickened, and Han Qian also unloaded the magazine at this time and removed the last bullet from the gun. Did he see the instructor at the shooting range do this? By the time he finished a series of actions, the Toad was already close to him and punched Han Qian's chest. This time, Han Qian felt as if his chest was about to burst. Before he could recover, he was already lying on the bed. On the ground. The anger in Han Qian's heart was aroused under the pain. He stood up, spit, and raised his fingers at the Toad. Come. If you lose, you will die, but if you win, you will live. At this point, no one cares about the mess. The Toad rushed towards Han Qian. Han Qian grabbed the Toad's ear. The Toad couldn't get away and stretched out his hand to wrap around Han Qian's neck. The other hands of the two of them were all clasped together. The fist landed on the opponent's head again and again. There are no bells and whistles, no martial arts secrets. It's just two Chinese characters with their bare backs constantly hammering each other's heads with their fists. After an unknown number of hammer blows, Han Qian felt that his head had softened, and Toad's fist began to lose its strength. Gradually, the two men's movements became slower and slower. Toad was the first to break free, took a step back, and bent his waist and arms dropped weakly, and he took a deep breath. Blood was flowing down his temples, and Han Qian was no better, with blood all over his face. Without too much nonsense, Toad rushed forward again and punched Han Qian in the lower abdomen. At this time, Han Qian's movements had begun to slow down. He couldn't help but bend down in pain. Toad grabbed Han Qian's ear and pointed at Han Qian. Qian's brow bone was a headbutt. This headbutt completely brought out Han Qian's anger. Without any hesitation, he stretched out his hand to grab the Toad's head and said angrily, "Only my wife can hit me on the forehead." Boom. With a muffled sound, Han Qian's forehead hit the Toad's head. This time, the Toad couldn't bear it anymore. The Toad also didn't retreat and hit Han Qian's head again. The two exchanged headbutts, and blood flowed like water. No one retreated, and after an unknown amount of time, the Toad spoke. "I treat her like a treasure in my hand. I can buy her whatever she wants. As long as she says it, I will agree to anything. I fight bricks at the construction site for more than 300 yuan a day, and I give her an allowance of 10,000 yuan a month. She actually slept with someone else for a painting, and even recorded a video to humiliate me, saying that I was from a rural area. What was wrong with me? What sin did I have for letting her do this to me?" Boom. Toad kicked the red plastic bag, and Han Qian clearly saw his newly purchased mobile phone flying through the air and hitting the wall. Broken. Then Han Qian was knocked backwards. He looked at the mobile phone that fell on the ground. The screen had been shattered. Han Qian's eyes were red. He slowly raised his head to look at the Toad. He took a step forward and raised his hand to grab it tightly. Holding the Toad's head, he said angrily, "Then what's wrong with me? I just came here to take my woman home. Do you know that this mobile phone costs more than 7,000 yuan? Do you know that this is the first time I have received a Mid-Autumn Festival gift in 25 years? Boom. Gradually, the two of them lowered their arms and stopped grabbing each other's heads, but they did not dodge the opponent's headbutts and attacks. Maybe that's a fool's errand. But no one can deny that they are real men, tough guys. This was also the way they fought. Han Qian hit the Toad's head with all his strength and roared. "You are wrong. You lost a man's self-esteem for a woman. If you were a humming man, you would be like this. But it's your fault and I am not qualified to interrogate you. You should never should have put me. My phone is broken." Toad raised his head and looked at Han Qian with confused eyes. Han Qian hit him on the head with all his strength. No matter how many hardships and grievances he had, he killed someone and he was guilty. Two men were lying in front of him. One died. One fainted. Han Qian picked up the clothes Toad took off and wiped his face, tied up the guy, picked up the gun and loaded the bullets, dragging the two men to find the way to the lobby. Warmth in the lobby. Ching Ching is also there. Very few recommendation votes. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 188. Those who should leave at the dinner party have left, and everyone who should not have stayed here. The lobby has been controlled by robbers. Officials from the Yeomanmen and many businessmen gathered here. The waiters and kitchen staff in the hotel have been driven away. Left the hotel. It was when these gangsters were searching people in every corner that Han Chien came in. When he came in, the gangsters left. When he went to the kitchen to look for rice, the gangsters happened to drive away people, so he didn't meet anyone despite his arrogance. In the lobby, a dozen gangsters held hands in various corridors, all the curtains were drawn, and they held weapons in their hands. They looked at the officials and businessmen who used to be aloof at the Yamen gate and squatted together. Their eyes were full of contempt. It turns out that you too are today, and it turns out that you are also afraid of death. A young man wearing a waiter's uniform held a pistol in his hand and sat in front of the crowd who were squatting closely together. Under his butt was not a stool, but the lobby manager who had been slapped by Han Chien. And this waiter was the waiter who spilled the wine on Han Chien, and he was also the man who had a relationship with Han Chien. He is Brother Lung in the Toad's Mouth, the mastermind of this incident. These gangsters came together with different purposes. Some came to taste the bodies of those arrogant women, some came for their own enemies, and some came for money. The purpose was different, but the result was the same. A gangster dressed in camouflage military uniform walked up to Feng Lun, bent down and whispered softly. Brother Leng, Daniel, and Toad can't be contacted. I told you not to take these two lunatics with you. Feng Lun nodded slightly and smiled. If you can't contact us, don't contact us again. If you lose two people, the chance of escaping will increase. Tell those who are looking for money to start searching and then evacuate. The remaining ones who are not afraid of death and are ready to watch the fun can stay. New men dressed as special forces began to lead people to search for gold, silver, jewelry, and cash. Feng Lun, on the other hand, reached out and patted the head of the lobby manager who was kneeling on the ground as a chair, and said with a smile. Isn't there a big screen outside your hotel? Now go turn on the big screen and remember to point the camera at me. After saying that, he stood up. Manager Datang was so frightened that he almost peed his pants. He stood up and begged for mercy, but to no avail. A few minutes later, a camera was focused on Feng Lun. He was holding a microphone in his left hand and a pistol in his right hand. Stood up and walked into the crowd with the lobby manager carrying a camera. When he walked in front of Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing, Feng Lun was slightly stunned and said doubtfully. There are still two beauties. Fortunately, Daniel is not here. The eyes of Yan Qingqing and Wen Wen were confused. Feng Lun ignored the two delicate flowers and walked into the crowd. All the people in front of him were hit by the butts of their rifles. Fortunately, only Yan Qingqing and Wen Wen escaped. And Yu Shisai squatting behind them. In the crowd, a middle-aged fat man with a gray face was slumped on the floor tiles. Feng Lun was looking for him. He grabbed the middle-aged man's few hair and dragged him out of the crowd. The middle-aged man did not beg for mercy, nor did he. Struggling, he knew that he would not leave here alive today. The camera focused on the middle-aged man and Feng Lun, who held the microphone and smiled. Prosecutor Feng Zhaida, you framed my father and imprisoned him more than 20 years ago. 5 years ago, you again wrongfully accused our father and son on trumped-up charges. Now my father is still suffering in prison. Why do you think you are still in the mood to enjoy yourself here? Feng Zhaida lowered his head and said nothing with a pale face. Feng Lun chuckled at this, picked up the gun, pointed it at Feng Lun's right leg and pulled the trigger. Boom! The gunshot made everyone in the lobby break into a cold sweat. Some women were frightened and screamed. But after the scream, what awaited them was punches and kicks. When the gunshot sounded, Wen also covered his ears and opened his mouth. She opened her mouth, but she couldn't make any sound. Yan Qingqing covered her mouth tightly and whispered. Lower your head and don't let these people notice you, if you don't want to be raped by them. Wen Nuan was even more frightened, and Yan Qingqing stood in front of Wen Nuan intentionally or unintentionally. Feng Haida, who had been shot, also had no chance to cry out. Feng Lun covered his mouth tightly and asked with a smile. The first incident has passed, so I won't interfere anymore. Let's talk about this time. Who killed the female reporter? You entered the so-called crime scene again and again to find evidence. In fact, you don't have to say anything. After saying this, Feng Lun stood up and shot Feng Haida's other leg again. This time, he ignored his wailing and made a silent movement. SHH. I'll send you on your way soon. Feng Lun looked at the hostages squatting together with a sneer on his lips. There should be people from the procuratorate present among you. I don't want to ruin your reputation because of a smelly fish. Of course, I believe that some of you should know the details of this matter. After all, I have checked your information, and there are many people were involved in the case that year. If you tell me one thing, I can open the door and let you leave here. At this moment, the big screen outside the hotel had shown the scene inside the hotel, and the police had also arrived. Li Jinhai was standing outside the hotel, with a needle inserted into the back of his hand and an intravenous drip hanging on it. He was really poisoned. There was sleeping pills in that glass of water. After returning home, his head felt cloudy and something was wrong. When he told the police to prepare, something happened to Yuanjia Kailong. Now the big screen is playing the recommendation of everyone the story of that chaotic case. Li Jinhai quietly called his wife and asked her to come over. The baby bump was still inside. The warm second aunt almost fainted when she heard the news. Then someone entered the scene with evidence and committed harm in the name of finding evidence. Someone went to the prison and took blood samples from a few years ago and brought them to the scene, which resulted in signs of a fight. Someone called anonymously to report that someone was committing murder. This person is Feng Haida. In front of many witnesses, Feng Haida was no longer silent. He laughed and admitted everything he had done, and openly told all about the darkness in the Yamanmen. All this was broadcast live on the big screen outside the hotel. Li Jinhai angrily asked someone to cut off the power to the screen, but Feng Lun seemed to have anticipated this and smiled at the camera. If you dare to close the screen outside, I will kill one person in 10 seconds until the screen image is restored. You can attack by force or use smoke bombs. As long as I press the bomb in my hand, dozens of hostages here will be on the road together. Do you want to protect the innocence of the Yamanmen, or do you want the people to die for you? Bureau Li, you make your own decision. Oh, I forgot that your niece is also here. She is Vice President Wen. The camera turned to focus on Wen Nuan, and immediately the gangster stepped forward. Yan Qingqing opened her arms to block Wen Nuan without thinking, looked at the gangster coldly, and slapped him in the next second. Bitch, are you still trying to put on airs with me here? As soon as he finished speaking, he reached out to grab Wen Nuan's hair. Wen Nuan screamed in pain. At this moment, a gunshot rang out in the hotel lobby. The camera was shattered, and the lobby manager knelt on the ground while carrying the camera and peed his pants. Everyone looked towards the second-floor corridor. Green smoke was rising from the muzzle of the pistol. A man with a naked back and covered in blood stood in the corridor. At his feet were the bodies of 2 unconscious men. You are the only ones who know how to play with guns. After saying that, Daniel's body fell from the second floor. Han Qian narrowed his eyes and smiled. One dies, you are next. The man looked at the gangster holding the warm hair with a playful expression. At this moment, he was radiant. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 189. Chapter 189. An accident occurred, and the screen outside the hotel went black. No one knew what happened inside the hotel now. Feng Lun looked at the man standing on the second floor, smiled softly at the allies around him, and told them to let go of a few of those who speak should go out, lest the police outside attack them. Seeing the hostages running out, the policemen breathed a sigh of relief, but also raised their eyebrows. Who was the shooter inside? Is there already civil unrest? At this moment, everyone on the first floor was looking at the man who suddenly appeared on the second floor. The man pointed a gun at the man at his feet who was also covered in blood and had fainted, and smiled. If he dies, you may not be afraid. Don't move around. Once the gunfight starts, the police outside will rush in. Even if you can run away, your identity will be leaked, right? You can die, but you cannot be arrested. I know you, but you don't know me. Feng Lun was still laughing, and the man on the second floor leaned on the railing and smiled at Feng Lun. How about letting a few people go to save your face? They won't cause you any trouble, but they will tie you up here, right? Feng Lun put his hands behind his back and looked at the man on the second floor with a smile. I know who Mr. Han wants to let go. President Yan Qing of Glory Group and Vice President Wen Wen of Changxiang Group. Unfortunately, I will not let go of these two people because they have relatively important status. Oh! Boom! This time Han Qian pulled the trigger without thinking. Feng Lun did not move. Bullets flew past him. The gangster on the first floor was about to shoot. Feng Lun looked gloomy and gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Calm down, Mr. Han is right. Once there is a gunfight, the police outside will rush in. Han Qian. Are you forcing me? Han Qian scratched his head and said awkwardly. I originally wanted to hit you between the eyebrows, but I didn't aim well. Please don't move while I try. How about you let me and these two women leave here, and I will go down and be your hostage. They will be more worried about my safety outside. Their influence can make the police give up the safety they want to ensure by storming. After saying that, Han Qian dragged the toad down the stairs. He walked very slowly. When he reached the first floor, he dropped the toad, threw away the pistol in his hand and strode towards Yan Qingqing and Wen Nuan. He grinned at the two women. Then he turned around and put his foot in the crotch of the gangster who slapped Yan Qingqing. The gangster bowed in pain. The next second, Han Qian put the gangster's head under his arm and fell backwards. The gangster's head hit the floor tiles hard. Han Qian stood up, clapped his hands, and smiled at Feng Lun. Give me some face. I'm very sincere. Feng Lun frowned and looked at Han Qian and said coldly. Your sincerity is to kill one of my people and knock out two of my people. No, 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 I just knocked out three of them. This rapist was killed by a toad. If the toad hadn't smashed my phone, I might not have struck so hard. As for the guy at my feet, I just threw away the pistol. I'm afraid I'll break him if I can't bear it. After saying that, he stretched out his two hands covered with blood and grabbed the arms of Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing respectively, and said softly. Go out the door confidently, he won't stop you. Wen Nuan looked at Han Qian who had become a bloody man and burst into tears. He held Han Qian's arm and refused to let go. Yan Qingqing gritted her teeth and looked at Han Qian, then pulled Wen Wen to the door. Wen Wen kept looking back. Looking at Han Qian stood there waving his arms to Wen Nuan, squinting and smiling. Gradually, Han Qian couldn't laugh anymore. He found a woman squatting next to him, who seemed to be called a poem. Thinking of this, Han Qian looked at Feng Lun and scratched his head in embarrassment. Are you trying to save her face by getting her out too? Feng Lun's mentality collapsed. He never expected that things would become like this because of Han Qian. His plan was perfect, how to start, how to escape, but now it has changed, and the most important bargaining chip has been lost. Feng Lun glared at Han Qian and cursed. Han Qian, don't be so shameless. Squat down. Otherwise I will definitely kill you. Don't be excited, don't be excited. In fact, there is still a very important bargaining chip here. If you let this woman out, I will tell you who is the president of Changxiang Group, one level higher than Nuan. Lin Zongheng, who had secretly changed into a set of ragged clothes, wanted to fight Han Qian desperately at this moment. Feng Lun tilted his head and looked at Han Qian in confusion. Lin Zongheng? Still here? Yes. Han Qian strode towards the crowd, bent down and patted Lin Zongheng's shoulder, smiling. Young Master Lin, please stop hiding. Han Qian, I'm going to hum your mother. Look, he has admitted it himself. You can take this guy with you. If nothing else happens, your escape route should be by sea, right? It takes 2 ships. It is probably possible to escape all the way out of the high seas. Now you can. I'm looking for money, and I'm very sincere, so I'm sending this bitch away too. My wife's sister, my sister-in-law, is giving back half of her s. Feng Lun smiled, stepped forward and dragged Lin Zongheng out of the crowd. This guy was instantly intimidated and begged to do it for him. He was willing to pay any amount of money. Seeing this, Han Qian bent down and stretched out his hand to grab Yushasai's shoulder. Her hands were all covered in blood. There was no cloth on her shoulders, so her hands slipped. Han Qian smiled awkwardly, and then Feng Lun spoke. Since this woman doesn't want to leave, then don't leave. Mr. Han, let go of Wen Nuan because I thought of what you said to me and to compensate the ant at the bottom of the stairs. Let go of Yan Qingqing to thank you for standing up for me just now. As for this woman, you'd better forget it, don't provoke too many romances, your body is important. Get out of here, I'm still a virgin. Han Qian knew that he couldn't push further now, and his followers began to search for cash, jewelry, etc. When the gangster in military uniform walked up to Han Qian, both of them were stunned. Han Qian raised his head and looked at the gangster, tilted his head and said, "Do you think I can afford to pay for it now? Do you want some underpants? If so, I'll give them to you." The military uniformed gangster nodded slightly. The man with Wen Nuan and Yan Qingqing should not be a poor man. Monk. Forget it, he is indeed a poor man. People who still use Nokia 110 in this era will not be rich. You guys also remember to talk to this Han Qian as little as possible and stay away from him. Feng Lun spoke again. He was discussing something with Lin Zongheng, how to remit money to an overseas account without being seized. When the monk looked at Yushasai, Han Qian turned around and took off her earrings, necklace, and ring on her hand without giving her a chance to refuse and handed them to the monk. The monk frowned and looked at Han Qian and sighed. You must be very skilled at being a traitor. How about I share half of the money you robbed? Monk. I told you not to talk to him, don't you understand? Now ask all the people in the government offices and businessmen to write down their records of bribery, accurate to the year, month, day, time, and amount, so as to prevent them from remitting to overseas money is applying for a refund, and if there are people who refund it, I will publish all your criminal experiences. Outside the hotel, Qian Ling came, and so did Tu Xiao. Wen Nuan hid in her second aunt's arms and cried bitterly. Yan Qingqing wiped her tears and stood in front of Qian Ling and choked. I'm sorry, Director Qian. Han Qian is still inside. It was he who negotiated with the gangsters that allowed me to walk out with Wen Nuan. He was covered in blood. After so many years, Yan Qingqing couldn't remember the last time she cried. Qian Ling said calmly and indifferently. Don't worry, he'll be fine. But her heart had already begun to bleed. God, is it really that I, Qian Ling, am too tough? One child after another left him. I'll give you a face. Vote. No. Chapter 4. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Ahuan. Chapter 190. Was it Han Qian who sent Nuan and Yan Qingqing out? Li Jinhai, who continued to understand the situation inside, was shocked. When Nuan saw Li Jinhai coming, he ran forward and begged his uncle to save Han Qian and nothing would happen. Li Jinhai looked at Wen Nuan, who was already panicking, and sighed softly. When did this baby bump have ever been wronged like this? He was so frightened that he lost his attention. He told his wife to comfort Wen, and then walked towards a relatively better place. Yan Qingqing asked softly. What's going on inside? How did you two get out? Yan Qingqing turned around and wiped the tears from her face. The redness and slap on her face were clearly visible. Yan Qingqing took a deep breath and spoke with trembling in her breath. It was Han Qian. He subdued two gangsters, fired their pistols and confronted them. He said that if shots were fired from inside, the police outside would rush in. If Wen and I were not released, they would shoot at the injured gangsters' legs. They opened fire, and no one would be able to escape by then, but he stayed inside as a hostage. After hearing this, Li Jinhai felt dizzy. This little bastard was trying to be a hero. Fortunately, the purpose of these gangsters was not to kill people. Otherwise, he would not have known how many times he would have died. There was another thing Yan Qingqing didn't tell Li Jinhai. Han Qian knew the leader of the gangster, and she didn't say how many gangsters there were. The gangster was the waiter. She couldn't control anything about the police, so she wanted to protect Han Qian's safety. While Li Jinhai was thinking, Yan Qingqing turned around and looked at Qianling and said seriously. Director Qian, I need to prepare cash. I want to redeem someone. Qianling frowned and nodded, then turned around to make a phone call. Yan Qingqing's voice was loud, and Li Jinhai heard it and quickly stopped her. No, the gangsters haven't asked for ransom yet. If they get a taste of it, there are so many hostages inside and they will demand it crazily. After the words fell, Yan Qingqing's roar followed. I don't care about the life or death of other people inside, nor do I care about their life or death. I want to save Han Qian. No matter what the conditions, I will save Han Qian. Yes, save Han Qian, save Han Qian. I'll call the secretary and prepare the money. The two women were already panicking. At this time, Li Jinhai's cell phone rang, and it was Warm Uncle. Ziohe, where's Xianyuan? The voice was thick and cold. Li Jinhai covered his head and said feebly. Xianyuan just came out inside, it's safe. Phew. I can mobilize personnel for you at any time. Xianyuan came out, Han Qian is still inside. If your uncle can't do it, don't do it. The phone was hung up, and Li Jinhai was now one of two people. He had no choice but to negotiate. There were too many gangsters inside, and the only way to ensure that the hostages were not harmed was through negotiation. This planning broke everyone's plans. Tonight, some people wanted to discuss plans to move to Xiao from District 8, some wanted to earn more money, and some wanted to sponsor their children to study abroad. A lively party turned into a chaotic scene of mutual revelations. People in the Yamanmen recommended each other in order to survive, exposing the crimes of those who were here and the crimes of those who were not here. The scene was very chaotic. Some people were reluctant to leave their valuables and were beaten. Some people begged for any amount of money, just to let them go. The hostages squeezed each other, hoping to gain favor from the gangsters. The scene was chaotic, but Feng Lun was very calm. The chair under his butt became Lin Zongheng, and the loaded pistol was pressed against his spine. Almost every gangster had a high-status person as a hostage beside him. The lobby manager found another camera at this time and handed it to Feng Lun with a smile on his face. The latter smiled and waved. "Okay, you can get out." The lobby manager knelt down to thank him, then stood up and turned around to run away. But before he could run a few steps, a crisp gunshot rang out in the lobby. The lobby manager was lying in a pool of blood. Even before he died, he didn't know why Feng Lun wanted to deceive him. The ones who were relatively calm in the crowd were Han Qian and Yu Shisai beside him. Because of Han Qian, Yu Shisai escaped the humiliation of being searched. She tilted her head and looked at the man in front of her. Now she knew why Nuan liked this man. Compared to that chair kneeling on the ground, Han Qian is indeed worth liking. Han Qian looked at Feng Lun, and Feng Lun looked at Han Qian. The two looked at each other and smiled. Feng Lun raised the gun in his hand and fired 2 shots at the roof. The chaotic hall instantly became quiet. Feng Lun smiled at Han Qian. "Do you know why I'm not in a hurry?" Han Qian chuckled. "Whoever panics first will lose. The leadership is in your hands, why should you panic? Are you curious why I killed him? He must be Toad's enemy. It's a pity that I beat Toad unconscious and can't see him anymore." Feng Lun smiled, pointed a gun at a plump young woman in her 30s, and said with a smile, "Go, prepare a chair for Mr. Han. You girls really need to thank Mr. Han. If he hadn't killed Daniel, would you all still want to squat here? You would have been pulled aside to have sex." The plump young woman stood up tremblingly. This time, it was no longer difficult to move the chair, and she was no longer delicate. Han Qian stood up and sat down politely, then stretched out his hand and put it on the young woman's head, smiling. "Squat behind the chair." Then he looked at Feng Lun and smiled. "I didn't kill Daniel, but I crippled him. I knocked him unconscious. I don't know where you picked this idiot. In this case, you still need to go to the toilet to play with women?" His head is somewhat flawed. Well, the man was killed by a toad. He said that this powerful person is a burden. You two should be careful, you may not be killed by your chatting allies anytime. All the gangsters looked at each other, and then burst into laughter. Feng Lun looked at Han Qian and grinned. "Well, it's good to sow discord, but it's a pity that we have to disappoint Mr. Shouting. Our original plan was to give up on the big guys. We would steal money and kill people, but we don't bother to associate with a rapist or a pedophile. Toad, if you don't kill me, I will kill Daniel." Han Qian scratched his head and smiled awkwardly. "Well, I heard a story before I came to the party. The protagonist of this story was your father, right? The one who was imprisoned for 3 years was you. I sympathize with you, but unfortunately I don't agree with you. If recognition was useful, would I still be like this? Han Qian, don't pretend that you understand very well. I sent you a message. I'll tell you to get out of here as soon as I spill wine on you. I've already treated you, your benevolence and righteousness have been exhausted, and you are noisy." The more Feng Lun talked, the more angry he became. He fired several shots at Feng's Haida, who was lying in the hall. He couldn't help but die. The corners of Han Qian's eyes twitched. He took a deep breath and said softly, "You will make people outside panic and not know what's going on inside. So now I'm going to ask the mixed race person next to you to make a call outside and tell them the current situation here. If she can explain clearly, she will live. If she can't explain clearly, she will die. Shall I fight? I'm more flexible with my words. Han Qian, don't be shameless. You should think about it later. Everyone here is grasping each other's handles. You know everyone's secrets, but they know nothing about you, haha." Yu Shisai found a mobile phone in a bag filled with a bunch of mobile phones. When she raised her head, Feng Lun was pointing a gun at her. Yu Shisai's mobile phone slipped from his hand. Han Qian, who had an eye problem, picked up the phone and handed it to Yu Shisai again. Smiled. Just give Nuan a shot. Feng Lun grabbed the camera fragments on the ground and threw them at Han Qian, saying angrily. Shut up. I'm making the hostages panic, not letting you comfort them here. Feng Lun didn't want to kill Han Qian, not at all. Maybe he could be killed before tonight, but when he saw Han Qian arguing with the lobby manager, he really couldn't pull the trigger. When the call was connected, Yu Shisai said in a trembling voice. Nuan. After the divorce, the ex-wife became a creditor. Author, Huan. Chapter 191. Li Jinhai gathered with the command staff and listened to the voice on the phone with bated breath. 2 hostages were dead, one was the lobby manager and the other was Feng's Haida from the procuratorate. The rest were safe. Now the gangsters' condition is that they must prepare the 2 speedboats have enough fuel, and 2 buses are being prepared. Outlaws are leaving. Li Jinhai nodded lightly and asked his men to prepare, and at the same time he spoke. Ask them if they can release a group of hostages first. In addition, Han Qian's family has prepared funds to redeem them. Yu Shisai was slightly startled when he heard this voice. After sending the message to Feng Lun, he did not get an answer, but got a gunshot. The call was hung up. Now that Feng Lun has an absolute advantage, Li Jinhai is not qualified to negotiate terms. When Li Jinhai had a headache, the police came to report. Director, Tu Xiao from District 8 is here with his people. Li Jinhai's anger rose to the top of his head. He got out of the car and waved to Tu Xiao before getting off. Guan Yunbiao on the side showed half a cold light behind him, and Tu Xiao chuckled. Li Jinhai, I heard that my child's uncle is still inside. You don't care about the life or death of the hostages. I don't care. You don't dare to come to me, Tu Xiao. Li Jinhai pointed at the tip of Tu Xiao's nose and cursed angrily. Tu Logu. This is not the ancient arena. Don't do this with me. You want to prove that this matter has nothing to do with you. I don't have time to doubt you. Get out of here right now. Tu Xiao shrugged and nodded to Guan Yunbiao. The younger brothers behind him quickly dispersed, but Tu Xiao did not leave, standing there and saying indifferently. My daughter begged me to protect her brother-in-law's safety. This child has lost his mother, but he cannot live without his uncle. Your negotiators are afraid of death, but I am not afraid. Get out of the way. Tu Xiao pushed Li Jinhai away and walked towards Wen Nuan. Both women had prepared cash and a suitcase. Tu Xiao smiled, stretched out his hand to hold the suitcase, and smiled at Wen Nuan. The child's aunt called me crying. If I, Tu Xiao, don't come over, it will be against the rules of the world. Don't worry. I will send the money in, and even if I can't come out, Han Qian will come out. Tu Xiao dragged his suitcase forward, wearing a white tang suit and black cloth shoes. This little old man was very ordinary, but none of the police officers dared to stop him. Li Jinhai stood there pointing at Tu Xiao and yelling angrily. Old man, are you here to stir up trouble? Arrest Tu Xiao. Tu Xiao turned around and pulled out a short knife from behind his waist, and roared at Li Jinhai. I have no control over your missions. My 2 younger siblings want me to save my little brother who is not very sensible. I, Tu Xiao, will come to save him. If you want to stop him, kill me Tu Xiao first. Guan Yunbiao stood motionless. Everyone wanted to get out of this hotel. The negotiators were hesitating, but the person who walked up the steps was an old man in his 50s. After walking up the steps and entering the main entrance of Yuanzhi Kailong, Tu Xiao disappeared from everyone's sight. In the hotel, Han Qian was stunned when he saw the old man dragging his suitcase in. He stood up and cursed angrily. Are you here to die? Tu Xiao ignored Han Qian, looked at the gangsters pointing guns at him with disdain, and curled his lips. Move me? Try. No one dared to move. Tu Xiao pushed the suitcase towards Feng Lun with a stern look in his eyes. Feng Lun turned around and looked at Tu Xiao and laughed. We really don't dare to touch a hair of Tu's boss. Who doesn't know that Tu's boss is the most loyal but also the most unruly person? He brings trouble to his family. Tu's boss never seems to remember the word no. Tu Xiao took out a cigar and lit it in front of everyone, then threw it high and threw it to Han Qian. The cigar fell on the head of a hostage. Han Qian stood up and smiled, picked up the cigar and put it in his mouth. The next second Tu Xiao took out 2 guns from inside his tang suit. Don't praise me. I know your details very well, Feng Lun. I have no other purpose in coming here. I want to give you 2 guns and a box of funds to scatter on the road when you escape at dawn. My sincerity is only I want to take someone away from here. The 2 guns were thrown on the ground. Feng Lun tilted his head and looked at Tu Xiao, then looked back at Han Qian and said doubtfully. Han Qian? I just found out at this moment that there is a bullshit director's wife in this hall, a chicken-feathered manager, and the most important thing is Mr. Han, the man of Vice President Wen and President Yan, the brother of Boss Tu, and let's talk about it. No other identity. Tu Xiao smiled lightly. His parents' precious son. Feng Lun smiled and shook his head. No, it's really not possible. Boss Tu, don't embarrass me. You can choose one of everyone here to take away. This is for the sake of the money. In addition, you can also choose anyone at will, but Han Qian can't. I want to take this person away at dawn. Tu Xiao's smile disappeared and he said lightly. Do you have to have me grab your relatives and cut their tongues in front of you before you agree? No one thought Tu Xiao's words were a threat, and all the gangsters did not dare to speak, because what he said was the truth, and he could do these things, but Feng Lun was still shaking his head. There was a stalemate. After a full 5 minutes, Tu Xiao sighed softly, and then Han Qian suddenly spoke. Good brother, send her out. Now Feng Lun can kill anyone here but he will never kill me. Wen Nuan is my wife, you are my eldest brother, Li Jinhai is my uncle, he can't leave even if he kills me, go out and tell I am safe from them, if not attacked by force. Tu Xiao frowned, and Han Qian grinned at Tu Xiao. Remember to prepare some cigars for me at dawn. They taste so good. Tu Xiao smiled helplessly and waved to the woman Han Qian was talking about. Yu Shisai mustered up the courage to stand up and take a step forward. No one stopped her. She walked towards Tu Xiao step by step. Han Qian grinned at Tu Xiao. He smiled and blew a puff of cigarette at the plump young woman beside him. Now everyone here will have problems if they go out, but this woman is a little different. No one here will expose her background. When Tu Xiao saw the plump young woman, his face changed and he nodded lightly. Tu Xiao came domineeringly and left gracefully. No one stopped them, and everyone's eyes dimmed. They knew that no hostage could leave now. Tu Xiao walked out of the hotel door and walked down the steps step by step. Everyone was looking at Tu Xiao, but Han Qian was not behind him. Seeing this, Yan Qingqing collapsed in Qianling's arms. The police officer trotted forward. He took out clothes and put them on the 2 ladies. Li Jinhai also ran forward, pointed at Tu Xiao and said angrily. Han. Tu Xiao interrupted. He asked me to bring this little girl out. I think the other one should be brought out in advance. If Feng Lun doesn't let Han Qian go, everyone can leave, but Han Qian can't leave. Li Jinhai was slightly startled when he saw this woman. Huh? Why are you here? The plump young woman lowered her head and gritted her teeth. Don't tell anyone that I've been here. Han Qian is safe. Who is Lin Zongheng? Yu Shisai trotted all the way, hugging Wen Nuan tightly, and her strong tears fell down. Wen Nuan hugged Yu Shisai and her eyes were dull. Han Qian didn't come out. It's daybreak. I heard someone called me a piece of shit. Ha 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 ha.